from what it was.
So, yeah.
Talk about that.
So Councilman Mays, again, that's the activity that's the activity current year to date. So there's the projection of what we're going to do for the year, but then there's the actual dollars that we spent out of that account.
Well, I'd say through activity through June.
Yeah, let me explain. The reason we do it that way, we leave the report format so that it goes through June 30th, 2018. That's just the way the report's set up, so that you don't have to change the date.
So you thinking by the time we get to June 30th, it's going to be more than 416,000?
Yes.
How much more?
We're in the next column, you'll see 730.
So you thinking it's going to be 730,000?
Yeah.
And so now they predicting 593. It's approving next year's budget 754,000, but the recommended is 593. Look at those figures. Why is the discrepancy?
So here, let me explain. The projected activity is what we projected when we put together the budget. So that would have been towards the end of March, beginning of April, right when we gave you the proposed budget.
Yeah, I got that.
But let me just finish. Since then, what has happened is we have taken that position out, but that activity hasn't been brought down yet. So that's the reason that you're seeing that. Again, the reason that we provide the projected activity, even though it isn't up to date, let's say, is as of the proposed budget date.
But what's the approved next year's budget?
That's
Why
what
do it say approved?
That's what you last year for fiscal 19. But
for
you're
18 now, okay.
Right.
So we do a 2-year budget, so
right.
That's going to be, that was just what we come up with. So now we get into the nitty gritty. It's going to probably be more like 593,000.
Precisely.
Okay, so that's what that column is, approved. Do y'all understand that, Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Yeah, we've been voting on 2-year budgets. And so last year they crunched the numbers, Mr. Griggs, and they came up with a projection of 754,000. Now we in the reality of it, that number is dropping. So that's what that column is, approved next year. Really, it could say approved last year, correct?
Yeah, you can say yes. Yes, that is correct.
That's what we
that's
voted
another way
on
to say
last year. That's one way of saying it. And now this year, it'll change. So that means looking at 1920, some of those figures could change. They just put stuff together and then we vote on it, but it could change.
That's correct. The second year will more than likely change when we come back before you again.
Now, when you go down to the net of revenues and appropriations, you got the 43,000 added to the 593. That give you the 637,000. Testing materials, professional service, assessment centers, education and training conferences, 32,000. Talk about that a little bit, somebody.
This is for, this is a recommended budget.
Yes, yeah. So
the annual trainings that occur, like the ones we have over at Mott for sexual harassment training, supervisor training, now these are supervisor training. Right, so those are most of the trainings that we've had on here.
And the cost is broken down into trainers as well as room rentals. What I think the Human Resources Department likes to do, a personnel office likes to do, is have these off-site, so that people can focus and concentrate and not be distracted with their day-to-day duties.
And they provide enough room, because we don't have enough room here in our training room. The training room here only will house 26 people at a time. So that's one of the reasons why we do it off-site.
So y'all projecting 32,000, and then right now, I guess you have spent about 24,000. So you're coming back with a projection of 32,000. That includes everybody in that office. who
Right.
need some type of training.
Oh, no, this is training for employees.
Oh,
All
this
the
is
employees, City of Flint.
training,
Right.
not just in
No,
that department.
not the department, for the City of Flint employees.
So when council go over there for training, that comes out of our budget, right?
No, we don't, they invite us,
Oh, they invite us, they pay for it?
Right, it all comes out of that budget.
but then we do our own training too, off-site.
So it also comes out
Yes.
of this all
Yeah,
employees?
everybody, yep.
Now,
Okay,
one question that I have,
okay.
until I hear somebody else ask questions. You got, who handles that, classification schedule? You got an exempt employee classification schedule wages. I know y'all know what that is, don't you, Mr. Newsom?
Yeah, it's the one that's posted, we discussed the other day.
Yeah, but then I'm hearing something about somebody hired as a plumber and somebody created a classification level in order to make the pay fit. Who does that? You?
The classifications are changed or determined by HR, yes.
Okay, and so if you do that, could that throw the budget off?
Well, no, that rate or the amount comes from the department. So the plumbing and mechanical inspector, where that classification was changed, that comes from planning and development's budget, not HR.
Okay, so they recommends it to HR and then you change it.
Right.
Okay, and the unions ain't involved in that?
No.
So I read in the paper the other day that we got some issues over at the water plant. What's going on with those posting and additional employees? Any unfilled spots, even though those spots are billed to those various departments, what do we look like as far as some of that go?
I might be able to take that. Are you talking about the article that Ron Fonger posted
Yeah.
yesterday? So there's been a lot of ongoing discussion about the roughly $1 million, $1 million plus that basically NDEQ is telling us that we're going to have to spend in terms of personnel. We will talk about this more in Finance Committee on May 9th. But at a high level, I can tell you this, that MDEQ's consent order mandates that we hire additional personnel, and we're in discussions on the feasibility of that given our financial situation. And so there has been an order that was put down by DEQ earlier this year or last year. I believe it was earlier this year, that basically stated that that the city of Flint has to hire an additional 12 people. And so we're going back and forth and figuring out what's a feasible number of positions that we can hire. But, you know, I will take this opportunity to remind council, I think I've told a number of you individually that when dealing with water, we have a lot of pressures on us to increase the revenue. It's not just Huey Newsom saying this, it's a number of different external organizations that are saying that we need to have we need to increase our revenue into the water fund one way or the other in order to make sure we have the correct personnel levels, the correct operational levels, correct capital improvements, so that we can provide safe water throughout the distribution system.
When I read that, I'm thinking about convening a special hearing on just those issues. On just those issues, financial and operational, because one impacts the other. And so after these budget hearings or somewhere close and maybe before, I think that's what I'm gonna ask this council to do, the whole hearings, to go over that whole piece as far as the revenues as well as the personnel and those orders. That's a serious enough matter for me. particularly if I'm going to be sitting in this finance chair, that we're going to convene special hearings to go through that whole thing. As it relates to personnel, what I want to know is, have any of these jobs been posted and not filled? And do y'all, so they have been posted?
Some of them have been posted for over 2 years, and we were unable to fill, or have been unable to fill them. So we've gone to F&V, which is an outside company that's been providing the services for us.
Okay, I want to see if you can give me a list of the water positions to man that plant that has been posted, when they was posted and not filled, as it relates to that order.
Yeah.
I want to see what was posted and not filled. When could I get that?
You can get that, excuse me, as soon as possible, because that's the same information we provided to the EPA.
Soon as possible. When?
Probably Monday.
Okay, Monday, Tuesday, somewhere in there,
Monday.
Thursday, Friday, somewhere next week.
Because we just provided that information to the EPA.
Next week,
Yeah.
I can get that.
Yes.
Can I make a suggestion? Again, I did make a request for a special order, and this relates to that.
Yeah, that
on
special
Wednesday.
order I received that. I don't know if I called it a special order, but is you referring to the 60-day update on the water thing?
This will encompass that, because we need to talk about revenue. So I'd like to make sure we discuss that then.
Well, you can discuss everything you like, but I'm telling you, I'm fixing to call a special hearing on all of that.
Great.
And it ain't gonna just be me discussing with city people. If I get my way, the people from the MDEQ will be down here too, and the EPA.
Yeah.
That's the type of hearing I'm looking at, Mr. Davis. I'm not gonna just sit and listen to the city. I'm gonna call in the MDEQ and the EPA. See, council has the right to hold hearings. And when we hold hearings, we got the right to get to the bottom of it. So I'm sitting back reading now in the news, and you can go read it. Ron Fonger wrote it, and it's all tied in. Mr. Guerra, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, after looking at your budget compared to some of the other departments' budgets, I really appreciate that you guys actually did cut your budget a little bit to be more financially and fiscally responsible. And I see most of it comes out of the position that you were once in. So now, just out of curiosity, are you doing both roles then that you were previously doing before?
Right.
And then saving the city money?
Right. The position is Director of HR and Labor Relations. And
Okay.
those duties fall under the director's position.
Okay, so you're doing both now.
Right.
So that way we can save money while you're
Right.
working a little bit harder.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. That was just the only question that I had.
What is your pay?
It's $90,001.60.
90,000. Okay.
$1.60. Yeah. And quick question, Mr. Mays. The information for the water department, the positions, you want the list of those that are required to be filled under the order, or just those that have been posted for some time?
Well, like Mr. Newsom said, we'll be getting to that. Don't struggle trying to get it because we're in dialogue. But yeah, I want to see what was posted that we couldn't fill.
Yeah, we have it.
That was related to the mandate.
EPA order. Okay. Yeah, we have it.
I'm trying to see what was posted that we couldn't fill or didn't fill, and what is the appropriate salaries, because I keep hearing salaries
Yeah,
as an
that's
aspect.
an issue.
And that's what I was kind of asking you. What role do you play as it relates to those classification and salaries? Once we set this budget, the budget has been set based upon certain projections. And now we keep hearing salaries is playing a role, and then now we're hearing about union talks and negotiations. And that's my concern. I'm reading a memo, Mr. Newsom, that is signed, I think, by you, and it was talking about, and Mr. Griggs, Mr. Davis, anybody who want to listen, I don't know if you've seen it, but this memo, did you have a copy? Was signed by Mr. Newsom because we was discussing whether or not it was proper to bring unions up or legal or whatever. Now I got a memo talking about folks who don't want us to really communicate with the unions. The unions and negotiations, Mr. Newsom, in my view, has nothing to do with these budget hearings per se. We know without talking to them, we can anticipate. I know the police did a 3% wage increase. I guess that's budgeted in this budget now. But whatever the other unions do is their business. But when it comes to information on proper classifications and proper views, I need to hear from them. For example, what is it, a level 44 for the mechanical?
The plumbing and mechanical. It may be that number.
What, it went up to level 44 or something?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the number is, no.
Yeah, I might be a little sure, but I'm not sure. But it was switched, correct?
Yeah, it was changed, yes.
It was changed. And so in this city, is it certain procedures that should be followed when we change classifications? Because I'm looking at some in our office. Mr. Newsom.
So there's a coordination between the HR department, the department head, and
the hiring department.
And the payroll, which falls into finance. So
and unions ain't got nothing to do with it.
No, and it comes from, in using planning and development, if the recommendation comes from the department to change the classification, which may follow a certain established scale already of pay, and based on their budget and that recommendation, HR works with them to change the classification.
So when classifications is changed, you're telling me no chime in or communication with unions?
Yeah, the union doesn't have any, let me say this.
So that was a change up higher, more pay. What if you do one down lower? That's just the department heads in your department, no union?
No, it wouldn't go down. It just would go.
So I'm just looking at changes up or down.
Yeah, it goes
in
up.
a budgetary sense.
Right, and based on
see,
that
I got to
department's
figure
budget.
out how this worked, because I just can't fathom when I was at truck and bus. I just can't fathom changing pays and classifications without unions. I mean, this is new to me in the city, but I was a UAW committee man, and I dealt with everybody in the plant in my department, and one of the things we talked about was changing classifications, job specs, and particularly pay. So y'all telling me, is it something, Mr. Newsom, that I need to hear? I'm listening.
Again, I'm a little concerned because I think that management's responsibility is to make sure that we get these jobs done in being as frugal as possible, responsible as possible with taxpayers' dollars. But at the same time, on the flip side, and nothing against the unions have a different role.
Answer me this: do you view me as management?
I view you as legislative. Okay,
so what is my duty? What do you view my duty and responsibility to be in these budget processes?
You are the checks and balances. You are responsible for adopting the budget and any changes to the budget, and that's your role as a legislature.
So that means if I got a responsibility for changing and adopting a budget, I should know as much about it as I can.
But on the flip side, is one thing between being informed about it versus being involved in it.
Who do you expect to inform me?
Management, which is why we have hearings, which involves department heads.
Information from management, the union,
employees.
I get information from whoever I choose.
Is there anybody that you're not getting any information from in terms of management? I think Ms. Jackson, myself, have done everything we can to answer your questions. If they ain't going to answer questions,
no, y'all have answered my questions, and I hope you continue. If I feel my questions ain't answered, I go to the city attorney and ask for subpoenas and put people on oath. I haven't done that. But I also have talked to employees. I've talked to employees in our office. I haven't moved around every department and talked to employees, but I got the right to do that. I don't have to just depend on management. I can gather information from employees, whether they work in the water department, whether they work in the fire department, or whether they work in the police department or street maintenance. I do have the right to ask employees. I don't just have to have hearings with management. I can call employees up during the budget process, you think? What you think?
I think that should be, at the very least, that should be coordinated with management, including the department heads. We don't want you all to be misinformed or any confusion. That's why management tries to play a role in determining who's going to be here present at these hearings.
So if I asked you or management to bring me 4 patrol officers, 2 detectives, 3 firefighters, you would coordinate that?
I would coordinate with Chief Barton and Chief Johnson to see if that's appropriate or if they feel that they can answer those questions on their own.
Let me say this to you. I'm going to try to get it straight one last time. Any inquiry or investigation that we want to do as this legislative body is appropriate. And that's why I think you're missing it, Mr. Newsom. I mean, we are a working team. But believe me, I don't have to ask sometime if I get votes and I can subpoena, put people on oath. I'm just surprised that you don't believe that it's proper to talk to employees and gather information about how they feel, how their salaries is.
I'm not saying that that's against the rules or the law. I think you have that right. But again, in order to be as efficient as possible, I think that it would be best to have that communication come via management, or at least have a coordination with management.
So let me ask this question. So you don't think it's fair for me to walk around departments and communicate with people, or for Mr. Davis or Mr. Griggs to walk and communicate and find out stuff?
I think that should be coordinated with the department head so that people can be focused on their day-to-day duties.
So, Ms. McKinney, when I came to labor relations, I coordinated that with you. When I came to personnel, would that be a fair statement?
Yes.
Mr. Newsom, when I've come in finance, other than talking to Ms. Steele, have I coordinated that with you?
Absolutely, and it's worked
So
out.
I've been in no other departments looking and doing, but I think that's just what we do naturally. We understand some of that. Yeah. But then at the same time, I know folks I go to church with work in City Hall. I'll talk to them. And I ain't gonna coordinate it with nobody. I'll talk to our secretaries, and I don't even coordinate that sometime with Ms. Brown. So hopefully, whatever we do in our investigation and inquiry process, management won't take it as no harm, as a foul. I think you would want us to cooperate with you just as we want you to cooperate with us. And I think that we will check and balance any information we get from employees with department heads and management. So I'm thinking we got a good understanding. Hopefully we do. Is it anything else, human resources?
Nope.
Council, anything for human resources? Ms. McKinney, you liking the job?
Yes, I am.
I said Ms. McKinney, Ms. McKinney Jackson. You liking the job? Mr. Branch, anything human resources? Ms. Jackson, I tell people this when they come up. You can be scared of Mr. Newsom with that purse and pocketbook and how he hold the purse strings. I'm not scared of Newsom as how he hold the purse strings. You need more people down there?
No, we don't.
You want me to ask you when he ain't around?
No, we've had this discussion. We've had several discussions. I'm not afraid to tell him at all.
Yeah, I think y'all be scared to tell me what y'all want, because he's holding the purse string.
No, not at all.
You can put your hand like this if you want to talk to him.
No, not at all.
Let me ask this question. What about the pay for those people working in there? Is it ample in what it should be?
I think the pay for all employees is not ideal because of the revenue source for the city and what the city's been through. But we are having a wage study done because I don't think employees have received a raise since 1999.
Y'all hearing that?
Since 1999.
Now check this out. If they ain't getting a raise, what's wrong with a employee of the month program where they get a bonus? I mean, if you gonna motivate people to do a good job in your department, you don't have to pay no attention to Newsom. Just do like this. If you want an employee bonus program, let me know, even with him sitting there.
No, and actually I think that's a great idea, but that's something that would have to be worked out with the departments because that would come from the department's budget.
I understand, and I would have to put money in there regardless of what he said, which might be cheaper than raises.
Could be.
So I'm just talking to somebody in human resource personnel. You know, if I did a good job, I wouldn't mind getting a bonus once a month. If I do a good job, give me a $1,000 bonus on top of my 500 and something. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, in fact, we have started each month now in our newsletter, Employee of the Month. So if we added to that a bonus, that would be great.
Well, let's talk about it, Mr. Newsom. I might want to set aside $500,000-$600,000 out of your coveted reserve fund for an employee bonus that management can implement. But I wouldn't let department heads and city administrators get that. That would be for certain employees.
As long as you can find the money, Councilman Mays, as long as you can find the money.
Anything else for this human resource crowd, Council? Ms. McKinney, it was nice talking to you. I'll tell you what, I still believe you're scared to spend money around this guy.
I'm telling you.
Okay, all right.
I just tried to spend some.
Did you?
We had that conversation.
In the bonus program?
Something else.
Something else. This is my copy.
Well, I think we got legal coming up next. Ms. McKinney, stay on guard. If any of the council people who are not here or anything come back, we got some callback dates. Right now, we ain't got you on there, but if we need to, we'll call you back. And then we will have some other meetings and deliberations. So we on schedule for legal at 4?
At 3. I just sent her a text message. Maybe I'll run and see if she's available now.
Okay, we're gonna take a 5 or 6 minute break.
Good Lord.
5, 6, 10 minutes, and we'll go with legal. Miss McKinney, if you get scared to talk money, whisper in my ear. Don't pay them no attention. I won't tell them what you said.
Okay.
We're gonna take a 5, 10 minute break.
This all you, right?
Yeah, you take
With no objection.
I'm done.
So,
Well, you don't tell me what you want me to do.
Anything's going
wants to change the classification, which I didn't want to get into it. The union, we notify the union, but they don't have any say-so. No.
and we got the handout from Human Resources and the Law Department. If council done had the opportunity to review it, any council persons got anything they need to start off with or communicate with this legal department? If we don't have anything from council, I want to say that before it's over with, Ms. Wheeler, I want to know how much money goes into the fund that deals with damage claims. That's a specific question that I have. And I also want to know about the self-insurance fund, that particular item. If no council person have something, y'all go ahead and start off however you want.
I'm sorry, just one quick point on the self-insurance fund. I do want to bring up that that is not an adopted fund. It's not part of it's not part of the budget that you all are adopting. So with that being said, there are some sensitive things that might come up if we were to discuss that. So we might want to explore an executive session if need be, if we get too deep into the weeds in terms of what's going on in the self-insurance fund.
Okay, I have no problem with that. I would put that down as an agenda item. Ms. Brown, through you to the staff, we will have an executive session to discuss that funding of the self-insurance fund and where it comes from.
Well, probably not on this agenda because that agenda is already done. It would have to be probably
That
special
would be
affairs.
fine at one in the
Special
future.
affairs.
So between y'all, can y'all get that as a agenda item on finance committee meeting?
Special affairs.
If it's
Special affairs?
Right, because we've already done the agenda for finance. Yeah.
so we'll prepare to have something for you at special affairs.
And whether it's this special affairs, this finance, or another one, I want to discuss that.
Understood.
And Ms. Wheeler, discussing it in public might have a detrimental effect.
Yes, that would be the reason for
So-
having executive session, and we'll make sure that we have everything covered for that.
Okay, now, what about the funds for the damage claims? That would be in that same conversation or separate? Same conversation?
Or you just want to know the amount, or?
No, I think, yeah, in terms of the amounts, I think we probably would, I think it's safest just to cover it all in an executive session.
That's some information I want to talk about. All right, we back to y'all.
Okay.
Council chime in at any time, because they know their budget, so y'all know your budget, right?
If I may suggest, it looks like the city attorney has prepared something out. Maybe what we do is let her go through that, and then you, at the council's will, based on your discretion, Mr. Chair, let the members of the council ask questions.
Mr. Griggs, you got this handout? Everybody got the handout? Ms. Wheeler?
Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you for having us here, and it's a pleasure and a privilege and an honor to appear before you to go over our budget. And what we have before you is just a budget summary to give you an overview of our legal services and what we spend with regard to legal fees for in-house, but really more outside counsel. And in the current fiscal and previous years, all payments were made from this account. So what we have is two things that we've kind of developed along with Mr. Newsom, is to make sure that with regard to anything relative to water crisis funds, that we have set aside a separate account so that you can see the difference of what's paid for our general or other areas of litigation, and then separately for what we use for water crisis. So there's been a separate account that's been set aside specifically to cover water-related matters, so that you would know and have more clarity about what's in that category. In the current fiscal year and the previous one, we did ask for a budget amendment for some of those fees, and we did require and we requested and you did grant to us an additional $1 million in the water crisis fund to cover those expenses. In addition to that, just so you know where we are with regard to reimbursements from the state, we did receive a letter on June 19th of 2017 from Fred Hedden that said that the state would reimburse us up to $300,000 for legal expenses related to emergency manager expenses. And as of November of 2017, the city has submitted $368,667.17 to the state for reimbursement. We also combined a couple of accounts that were similar in nature for newspapers, professional services, and publications, which is noted below. And then we have a listing of items that there were no changes to, just to give you an idea of what we spend money on in our department or allocate money. For example, supplies, things for staples, shredded. Also, as far as legal research types of activities, this is our law supply line item for LexisNexis. This is a legal research engine and other books and supplies that we need. Printing and publishing, these are kind of pretty self-explanatory. And also for off-site rentals, which is Iron Mountain for other files that we've had from years prior. So they keep our storage of our legal files. We still continue to do continuing legal education in the department to make sure that we are staying abreast of legal issues, and anything that we have in this budget, we do try to be very frugal about it. Any types of legal seminars that we can go to that are a part of our subscription for Institute of Continuing Legal Education as a part of our subscription that are afforded to us. We try to go to those things other than go to ones that do have an expense to them, but so we try to be frugal with that. In addition, professional services, transcription fees, things of that nature, requests for medical information that we get on some of our cases, that's within the professional services category. And then, of course, as you know, litigation and suits, settlement of claims. We do currently have one position that is an open position as a part-time litigation assistant that we would like to fill in the near future.
Before you go to the next page, anybody got any questions on this first page? Go ahead, Mr. Griggs.
Guy, you say something here about professional services. Angela, what are those? I don't see those listed.
Okay, they're the third from the bottom. Those would include court fees, transcription fees, county bar dues, legalese. That's for when we have to request medical records for different cases. If we have a neglect case, somebody trips and falls, different things like that, then we have to get the information. And RIPCA and process serving. RIPCA, Borowski, they do a lot of our court transcribing and depositions that we take, so we utilize their service. And also process serving, if we have to serve on a lawsuit, provide process of service personally, yeah, then they will do that.
Okay. The next thing is I see your only revenue is sundry. Just out of curiosity, how do you get a revenue in the law department?
I'm glad you asked that question. It's one that we're proud of. So
what was that? I didn't understand.
I said, I'm glad you asked that question. That is one that we're glad that we're bringing in some money. We want to, we want to bring in money as much as we do defense and prosecution in other areas. We also provide a service for Freedom of Information Act requests.
Oh.
And those do have costs associated with them. So we brought in close to $7,000 so far this year. Also, with regard to accidents, if somebody hits a city vehicle, then we also collect that money as well. Property tax settlements, we've collected close to $130,000 for collection. And so those are some of the things. I'm sorry, I'm skipped to the third page, but since you asked, I wanted to answer your question.
Yeah. On the rentals, is for what, off-site file storage? Is that an insured operation, or?
Is that a what?
Insured, your off-site file storage?
Yes, I'm certain they're an insured.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Fields.
I don't know if I'm missing some pages, but Councilman Griggs asked a question. I only have one page provided in my folder on the law department, and then I have the pages that the law department had provided. Is this one page supposed to be, is that it?
Actually, we'll get you, do you want to know what it is?
Now, I have this extra page they gave me.
Oh, okay. Oh, I see.
But under law department, you know, where we see the whole budget, there's one page. Am I missing something?
And the account numbers ain't matching up on this particular page.
So, yeah, so going back to what, I didn't get a chance to coordinate with the city attorney, but there are a few account numbers that are listed in the summary that the city attorney provided to you that start with 677. That is the, that's that fund we were talking about before that we were asking that we not dive too deeply into until we go into executive session because of the fear that some of those conversations would require us to get into some sensitive information, so that's part of it. And so going back to your question, Ms. Fields, I think what you're alluding to is the fact that, the handout that was given to you all yesterday only has costs associated with personnel and operating expenses that are in the 101 fund versus what's specific for 677. Is that correct? Is that what you're asking?
Correct, because when you look at what you've given me, there's no line item for professional services, there's no, so you have funds in here in the law department's handout that are not reflected in the budget handout, which makes it pretty difficult to look at this in any logical way.
That is correct. So everything that is preceded with 101 in the handout that city attorney gave you would also be in the document that you received in your mail yesterday. We did not include anything for the 677 fund in your handout that you received yesterday, which ties back to the budget. But she's summarizing activity in both 677 and 101. But again, you all don't adopt the 677 fund.
Are you trying to say that the line items that I'm seeing here in the 677, okay, are so confidential, you can't even give it in the total budget that you've given us?
What I'm saying is, you all do not adopt the self-insurance fund, but if you want any specific information about the self-insurance fund, I'm asking council to limit those questions, anything specific about that, to an executive session, because my fear is that we'll breach into something that is sensitive to ongoing litigation. I'm not saying that we don't want to provide that. We're just concerned about providing it in this form, is what I'm saying.
All right, I'm concerned about the professional services line item, okay?
Thank you.
I'd like to know, first of all, it's my belief, and maybe I'm not correct, but we have certain attorneys that are employees, correct? And then we have attorneys we hire, legal firms, to do particular work. And I've never actually heard a rationale for how that decision is made. And is that professional services fund, you're saying that is the, from the self-insured fund? We pay for professional services out of the self-insured fund?
That is correct. So there are some professional service fees that are paid out of the 677 fund.
Some or all?
Some.
Okay, so where's the line item for professional services that are not paid out of the self-insured fund?
Well, let me make sure I understand your question. So for legal fees that are outsourced, that all comes out of 677. I thought you meant professional services overall, but if you're talking about legal fees for...
I'm talking about, we hire an attorney.
That's out of 677.
So we use our self-insured funds to do that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we don't differentiate in the budget between the money that we've reserved for settlements, okay, versus what we're using to pay outside firms to do the work of the city.
You're not... You're not paying settlements out of the 801.000 line item. So it is differentiated at the account level for sure, because professional services comes out of an 801.000 account in 677, but not any settlements.
Well, then I guess the language confused me. I thought we were insuring ourselves, so when we had a settlement, we had the money to pay on that settlement. So that's not what the self-insured fund is?
But it also goes to pay for some of the fees to seek those settlements, is what we're saying. So the cost to get to that settlement plus the amount for the settlement also is in 677 fund, is what I'm saying.
Okay, well, it seems really strange to me, and I'll tell you, the way you've got some on here and some not on here, this makes it very hard to tell what's really going on with this budget. And personally, I don't like this format at all. And I don't think there's anything in executive session, okay, that there's a need for an executive session on budget items.
Well, Ms. Fields, all I'm asking...
Because the budget is public.
Ms. Fields, all I'm asking is that we take executive session to talk about things that are associated with some of the legal fees we're paying, because of the sensitivity of some of those cases that are active. That's all I'm asking. We're not asking, we're just asking for executive session.
Excuse me for interrupting you. I have not asked for any of those details of those cases. I've only asked to see these line items in a regular budget format all together.
We can provide that for you.
I think that would be a good idea. So every other department has had to provide their entire budget in a format we can look at. So, in some of my questions around these professional services, I've never heard the rationale for, and now it's definitely a budget question, because however you come up with the formula for what we should have in our self-insured fund, does that amount show up in our total budget, yes or no?
You will see the total amounts delegated for estimated settlements. But the formulas, we can explain that to you.
Okay, so what is the, just an approximate, okay, in any given year, what do we put aside for settlements?
I thought we was going to talk about this in executive session. That was the reason that we said we would have the executive session.
This is not a confidential question.
Let me say this. Regardless of what it is and what they answer, the minute that it moved forward, that was the original question that I asked for certain reasons. And so now you pressing them to do it in the public, y'all comfortable with that?
I'm just going to kind of give a little bit of an explanation. The 677 fund is an internal service fund. It does not get adopted by City Council. It's not an adoptable fund. You don't adopt it. But where the expenses are for this fund, you do adopt in all the other funds. An internal service fund is paid for out of the 101, the 202, the 203, the 205. All those funds put in a specific amount depending on what the self-insurance fund needs. The current year, your question was the current year, how much was set aside for litigations and suits for the current year was $1 million.
So now we don't need the executive session. So, Ms. Brown and everybody, if you don't need the executive session, we don't have to have the executive session. Now, that was the purpose that we was having the executive session. So now we don't need it, correct? So I don't need to have an executive session. So we can cancel the executive session.
May I continue?
If that's the amount that they didn't want to talk about, it's been talked about, so we'll proceed.
Again, Councilman, that number in itself is not what we consider sensitive. It's some of the things that the conversation could lead into. This is what we're concerned about. That's all we're saying.
I understand, and then we're gonna break that down. So, you know, what do we want? The executive session or not the executive session? Proceed, Ms. Fields.
Mr. Mason, if I could.
Just 1 second, Ms. Brown.
I believe both Mr. Newsom and Ms. Wheeler did indicate that they, in the session, would want to talk about the damage claims.
I understand. That's what I wanted to talk about, but, you know, I want to talk about it all in executive session. So proceed, Ms. Fields, but I didn't cut it off. I didn't cut it off. We just had that conversation. Ms. Fields, proceed.
When I look at the budget that was given to me, and that's one of the reasons I asked the question, because I do know that we spend thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars for outside law firms. And I don't know how we decide to spend money in even though it's an internal fund, versus having our own attorneys. I don't know if it's because our own attorneys, there's expertise in certain areas that maybe collectively they don't have, or they're already, you know, working 60-hour weeks. I mean, I don't know what the reason is. I've never heard any rationale for it, but I think it is important that we understand the rationale, because once again, it's taxpayer dollars, okay? And I just want to make sure we're spending that money wisely. So could you tell me, please, how do you make that decision whether you use the money from that fund or you use the staff, which come under wages and salaries?
Well, let me just start by saying that we have a very small staff for the amount of litigation that comes into a city of this size. And I appreciate each and every attorney and our administrative staff who work very hard and tirelessly. The amount of litigation that comes into the city, it is not possible to have everything placed on the shoulders of the staff. They all have their varying strengths in different areas that they all participate in. In addition to not only what they do as far as litigation files, we also have a entirely separate office that does prosecution for the city too. Prosecuting misdemeanor ordinances, municipal civil infractions, any type of ordinance violation. On top of that, we also provide a service to each and every department, not only when there is a lawsuit that's filed against them or against the department or individual, however it comes in, but also by way of providing legal opinions to each and every department that needs our services, and including the city council in each and every legal opinion and referral that we receive. So we have to make sure that we're providing the best level of service that we can provide. And sometimes that does include lending ourselves or obtaining the expertise of outside attorneys in different areas. And so I do go through and make sure that the things that each and every attorney can handle inside that we do, but certain things need to go outside, or we're already at our capacity. And with this water crisis that we've had over for a long time, this is like no other time to me in the history of being here at the city, and specifically for the law department. And so we are beyond capacity, but we also are privileged to have the jobs that we have, okay? So we do the best job that we can do, but like I said, we have to be able to make that determination that certain things need to be handled either outside or in tandem with an outside firm. In addition to that, sometimes when you have a case, there are certain conflicts or potential conflicts that can come up in a case. So what happens is that you'll have a specific individual who's represented by an outside attorney versus an inside attorney as well. So there are certain things that we do to navigate through those as well. But like I said, it's a great task. We like what we do. We're privileged to do what we do, but there's a lot of work. And a lot of times, like I said, you may not necessarily see a specific result, and I wish that, like I said, you could see every specific result, but sometimes the results you see are the ones that you will never hear us toot our horn about, because people ask us things, and the reason they ask us is to make sure that they don't necessarily fall into a wrong position or a position that could be detrimental to the city. And so a lot of the things that we do are preventative measures. And I think there's a lot to be said about taking preventative measures by getting legal opinions and all that. Not everything has to turn into a lawsuit. And in addition to that, when there's economic development, when there are things that are coming into the city, there are a lot of contracts. I mean, I probably missed a lot of things that we actually do because there's contracts that are prepared. And so that's a huge area for the city, as far as what you see as a council that comes in on a Monday or a Wednesday. Behind everything that you see that comes in and that you have prepared for you, there's a huge, substantial amount of work that belongs to the law department that we're a part of.
Mr. Guerra, when they get done, just hop in there.
Yes, and also the ordinances. Your department handles the ordinances.
And resolutions.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, part of, we make referrals here when we want to see specific information, and my question's about professional services fees. I've made referrals that are way, way, way overdue. I want to see some examples of what we are paying outside firms for, what kind of work they're doing. And so I'll mention it again, even though this is the budget hearing, I have yet to see the 2 years detailed billing statements of the 2 law firms I requested, and I would like to see that.
Could we
You just
have
made that request. She just made that request
Yeah,
like last meeting, and we haven't received the referral, and we're glad to answer those questions for you. But like I said, if you have the question about what types of cases, I can tell you.
Let's
Well,
see if
I'm asking the questions I want to ask, and I have another question. I'm going to
Okay,
throw
just
Mr.
a
Mays.
minute. Let's see if we can have some of that or any of that information. I told Ms. Brown to move forward with the executive session on that fund for Monday. So let's see if we can have any estimates of the professional service expenditures. If it's not complete, get what you can, get us an idea. Go ahead and proceed, Ms. Fields.
One of my largest
Mr.
questions
Guerra,
here has to do with the handout you gave us. In the second paragraph, you say, in the current fiscal year and the previous one, a budget amendment has been required to cover expenses. We have asked for an additional $1 million this year in the Water Crisis Fund to cover this. Could you, in the Water Crisis Fund, are you referencing the money that was allocated by the state and federal government? Are you're just creating a new, you're going to name a fund water crisis fund, and now you want an additional $1 million. Could you explain this to me?
Yeah, it's not correct what you just said. This is not anything coming out of WIN or any other funds like this. We are simply trying to make sure that when we get an inquiry from, whether it be the council or from administration or from whomever from the public, that we're able to responsibly say what is designated for litigation fees as a result of this crisis. And so that is the reason for the differentiation and having a separate fund that designates between what we have for our garden variety, lack of a better way of saying, litigation that is handled by the city versus something that is dealing with water litigation that is like no other time that we've had to deal with this. So we want to make sure, and also I think is being accountable to you and to the taxpayers to be able to show specifically what is being allocated for water, what is being used for litigation expenses. So we want to have that separation. I think it makes it easier to do that, other than, because I can anticipate the question, no problem, but the question next is, once you have one total amount, is what part of that is for water litigation? Well, why not just have a separate account that says exactly what that is?
Well, I don't see on this budget the additional $1 million, right? So this is just a request.
Mr. Newsom looks like he can answer that.
I'll finish asking my question
if
first.
you don't see it, let him speak on that, if you will.
Ms. Fields, we will print out and provide to council before special affairs, even within the next business day, a handout that you will see in your boxes that will show where that $1 million is in the 677 fund. Again, as Ms. Steele did say, we don't adopt the 677 fund, so that's the reason you didn't see it before, but we will provide it. You do have a right to see it.
I appreciate that, but if I had been allowed to finish my question.
You can finish now.
You would have answered
and if you keep
differently.
saying that and wasting time, then I ain't gonna say finish. Just stick with it and we gonna guide you through this. We got an hour, you going, keep going. I ain't for no mess today. Proceed. Well, good. Mr. Garrett, go ahead.
Yeah, what I wanted to ask was, how many staff do you
I'm
have?
going to acknowledge
in
the
legal
city
department?
attorneys in here, Mr. Gilchrist, Ms. Fields. I'm hating you so sensitive, and so if you don't want
You're
us
so
to help.
impolite.
Hey, look, I'm going to give you one warning.
You are very.
I'm giving you one warning. Another word, I'm going to help you get out of here. Go ahead, Mr. Garrett, proceed.
How many staff do you have in the legal department? And out of that staff, how many are attorneys?
We have 5 attorneys and two administrative staff. 4 of the let's see.
Is that including yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know, it's like, wait a minute. So we have 3 full-time assistant city attorneys, 1 part-time assistant city attorney, 1 paralegal, Jennifer Delaney, sitting to my left, and also a litigation assistant, Victoria Cooper.
And then the reason I asked that, because after looking at the wages, I know how much some lawyers can possibly make, and you guys are probably taking a pay cut working for the city, I'm assuming. So.
Yes.
So thank you guys.
Pay cut and working more, but like I said, that's what we signed up for, and,
Right.
and still, again, it's a privilege to do what we do.
Well, thank you guys.
Mr. Garrett, I missed it. What was your question in communication? I was still focusing.
The question was, how many staff did they have and how many were attorneys?
And what was the answer?
5 attorneys and 2 additional staff.
5 attorneys. I see 1, 2, 3. I see Mr. Millhouse, Ms. Kurtzner, Mr. Kim, Ms. Wheeler. Am I missing somebody?
Right. Attorney Whitney Frazier Jenkins, she is with the city part-time. She works remotely for the city. She did start off as a full-time attorney for the city, and she did have to relocate, but when you...
She still works.
Right, absolutely, and she, along with the other staff...
Is she good?
Excellent.
Who is the lady sitting to your left?
This is Jennifer Delaney. She is the law department's paralegal.
Paralegal. Okay, I've seen her before. Her last name is?
Delaney.
Delaney. And the lady who I talks the most with is Mrs.
Victoria Cooper.
Miss Cooper. I like talking to Miss Cooper.
And you know what? I apologize.
Well, introduce your staff.
I left, if you want to stand for just a minute there. Introduction. And I forgot one of our other attorneys who's serving in our military right now, Reed Erickson.
Oh, yeah, that's one of the key men. You don't overlook Mr. Erickson.
So I apologize to Reed.
So let me ask this question. Do we need to give Mr. Millhouse a $8,000 bonus to help us get that house and stuff together? Mr. Millhouse, you need a bonus? He said he fine, so we gonna get it together pretty quick on the land bank property. Now, this is budget time. I get to move money around. If you need $8,000 to get that together, don't be scared to say it in front of Mr. Newsom and Angela now. Mr. President, anything for the legal department? Mr. Davis, Mr. Griggs? Mr. Gilchrist, anything for the legal department? Mr. Branch? Y'all gonna have something to say when I start moving money. Miss Wheeler, how much extra money you need for the legal department? Tell the council, don't pay attention to them management guys. What you need?
Let me just correct the record. We have 5 other.
You got 5 full-time, 5 other. 1, 2, 3 with Reed Erickson and Miss Jenkins. That's 5 and you 6.
Right.
So that's 6. Everybody in agreement on that. Miss Kirchner, 9. Miss Kirchner is over there doing what you used to do. Is that right? Over at the 67th District Court.
Yes, she is. She's working hard over there.
Yeah, I'm trying to stay from over there. I don't want to go over to her. What'd she say? I ain't too welcome. I don't want to come to your division. Okay. I'm going to see if you do as good as she did over there. I'm sure you will. Yeah, well, she had a couple trials. I was in both of them, I think. Anyway. So, Miss Wheeler, what is you missing? What do you need? Mr. Kim, Mr. Millhouse, Miss Kirchner, Miss Dale, how you say it? Delaney, what is y'all department missing? I'm not gonna ask what you can cut.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask what are you missing first? What do you need? Because y'all scared to tell Mr. Newsom because he hold that money tight. Talk to us. What you need?
I'm a little nervous.
Yeah, don't be nervous. This is you got immunity.
No.
We grant you immunity to talk. If Mr. Branch, Mr. Gilchrist, Mr. Newsom, I don't think Miss Steele is as hard line on that money. Oh, well, she give me the look. Tell us, it might not happen, but what would be your wish list?
Well, we do want to fill an additional position. Right now, we have it denoted as an assistant city attorney, but I think we want to make that into a deputy city attorney position. So we may require a little bit of an increase with that salary. So, and one of the specific reasons that would be very beneficial is because the new charter also calls for a deputy city attorney position. So as far as if there was any issue, or like I said, say I gets some other job or whichever, you know.
Or like me, if you get hit by a Mack truck or something crossing the street.
I'm trying to think positive, you know. But, you know, like I said, something else comes up, then you have somebody who it automatically would revert to as a deputy city attorney.
Mr. Newsom, what you thinking?
So I'd like to take this opportunity to remind council, I think you and Deputy Finance Lead, Ms. Steele, talked the other day. It's going to be very important for us, you know, again, the Finance Department is strongly advocating that we don't add any additional cost into this budget. If we do, we need to cut something somewhere else. So that's number one. And number two, and I did tell Ms. Brown this earlier, that it is important for us that you all, if you all want to want us to explore these, you need to prioritize them. So that's going to be important.
Mr. Newsom, you know, with this council, you might see in the first time in years, you might see us adopt a budget as proposed. I don't think so. I know you got your fingers crossed, but I don't think so. But I think once we get to the part where we discussing any changes, amendments, or priorities, I want anybody and everybody in on it. I think this council ain't hard line. You know, we'll adopt a budget as proposed and get a handshake on any amendments in the future. We trust you like that, but we would rather talk about it on the front end, dip into your reserve, and make some things happen. But we ain't tripping. We'll see what we do.
So if I may,
Let me do a point of information.
Yeah.
No, you got the floor.
Can you not say we?
We. I know you get scary, but you got the floor. Proceed.
That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, you trying to protect your politics, ain't you? Y'all see how he threw me under the bus right quick. We.
One more thing, if I may, Mr. Chairman. You know, I know you refer to it as a reserve for, you know, but we don't like to, I think of it as a contingency for future costs if we do not see an increase in revenue. So, you know, this is something that we have to really take care of.
Have you heard of Mr. Miller?
I've heard of many Mr. Millers.
Mr. Miller that's been brought in with the Kellogg grant to do economic development.
Absolutely.
You know you're going to see some revenue come in from Lear, right?
I trust Mr. Miller so much, and I've worked with Mr. Miller, and I'm very excited about the work he's going to do. I'm from Missouri, the show me state. She'll show me first before I spend it.
So we can't give him none of your reserve money to build capacity in the economic development department, which is something I articulate.
I understand that, but you know, our friends from Kellogg are subsidizing Mr. Miller's activities.
$1 million of your dollars probably make $2-3 million with Mr. Miller. We gonna talk about it. I'm sorry, that's just how it goes, back and forth. The finance chair and the finance director, it's gonna happen like that, Ms. Wheeler. Is it anything anybody else got for legal? Now, y'all know if y'all ain't got nothing, the chairman gonna say something, so. All right.
We want to announce our next meeting.
Yeah, we will announce it. But where we at is Monday. I hate to see Miss Fields leave like that. I'm not crying when she left the other day, because look where I'm at. But the point is this. She kept going back to that 677 fund. And we're going to talk about that in executive session. We'll talk about the breakdowns on it. But that's going to be on special affairs. And I'm not going to talk about it if we vote to go in there. I ain't going to talk about it but 10, 15, 12 minutes. And if she wants to hold 12 or 15 minutes, we'll put it on another agenda. But that's how I'm going to do. It just kept circling back to that 677 fund. And so my job is to manage these meetings. Mr. Guerra, I think he wanted to be gone earlier. President Winfrey, I'm glad you're here. And we've been staying on schedule. We're going to have callbacks. Ms. Brown, go ahead and read that callback schedule and who we calling back so far, if you know.
Okay.
And if y'all want to add something to it, listen close.
The callback date is Tuesday, May the 8th, and so far we have 4 departments that are being called back. Number 1 is the Fire Department, Information Services, Economic Development Department, even though they've not made a presentation at all, and of course, I believe the Police Department as well, so it's 4 so far.
Now, Mr. Branch got something he was shaking his head on. Mr. Newsom, do you mind? I look at people's demeanor, and I've seen something. He your boss? Is he my boss? He ain't. I listened to him.
We're going to request to reschedule the economic development call back because Mr. Newsom already had an appointment outside of town.
Well, let me put it to you like this. If they not here on May the 8th, Mr. Gilchrist here, Miss, what's her, Lynette
Phillips.
Miss Phillips, Mr. Miller, we don't care who come from the department, and we might not get nothing done, but that's a new department. And Mr. Newsom, he ain't budgeted yet. He waiting for the Kellogg Foundation to continue. Councilman Mays is saying, I don't care if I set $1 million over there. If you can keep them from spending it, they'll put it back. But what I want to do, yeah, I keep saying that. I mean, we moving money, and then you can't get with them and say, Mr. Gilchrist, Mayor Weaver, don't spend that, put it back. Not only, Mr. Branch, am I trying to have dialogue with department heads, but I got to see exactly as we get ready to meet and decide whether we adopt the budget as proposed or make any amendments, whether it's to our office selfishly or to others, police department, everything we talked about, some of it might happen and some of it might not. Just like when y'all did your budget. Now it might be where you want us to make some amendments. You might want us to make some amendments now versus later. So what I'm looking at after the 8th, somewhere around, when is the public hearing, Ms. Brown?
It's on the 22nd of May. We're placing an ad in Sunday's Flint Journal.
We have to have a mandatory public hearing to get their input. Before the public hearing, I would like to have been met and heard from the council on any real serious proposed amendments. I'll probably try to do that in Wednesday's committee meeting. Might not. It might take a special meeting. But let's say we're in a meeting now. Mr. Guerra, starting with you, do you see any hardline proposed changes or amendments or areas that you might think, whether you identify them, do you see any?
No.
Mr. Davis?
Only changes I see is with this body. The council members need to show more effort to be here for the hearings. That way, we won't have to go back and forth over and over, and it be brand new information to the people that should be here, and put the different department heads, which is wasting time, because they weren't here to hear the information that we obtaining right now. But I would like to see more council participation, but no, I have no question for no department.
Well, let me say this in response, Mr. Davis. The way we gonna vote and the way we gonna move, if they wasn't here to train and left the station, we gonna move and vote anyway, and we gonna take it from there. We will accommodate them if they have some quick questions, but it ain't gonna be no long stuff. You see how I throw myself out of a meeting. No, I really won't, but I mean, you see what's happening here. It ain't gonna be no mess. Mr. Griggs, are you contemplating anything you done heard so far, any changes, any additions to this budget?
No, Ms. Wheeler answered all my questions.
Not just the law department, but as we go into these later meetings, any sensitive areas that you might think, we gonna start letting them know where Ms. Steele and Mr. Newsom can look at moving stuff around if we see something. Mr. President?
Mr. Chair, if I could apologize for being late, I gave you the wrong time. I told you 2 o'clock. My class didn't start until 2.
Yeah, and you thought you got out at 2:15. You the president, though. We held it down. You
Yeah, I know you
okay?
did. But no, you know what? Once I got this information, I did go over it, and I did something that Councilwoman Galloway has been doing. I compare it to last 2 years' budget as well. And I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to hear the presentation. But at this point, I don't see anything that I'm wanting to change, because and I know this is not going to sound good for some folks, but I'm somewhat conservative when it comes to budgets and things. And then some people gonna like to hear that. But no, Mr. Chair, I don't have anything that I see right now that I would like to change.
I'm seeing movement and look like Mr. Newsom. Can y'all see what I see? Look like he's trying to say something. Am I wrong?
No,
I am right.
you are correct. I just wanted a clarification after all the council members chimed in. I did want to clarify.
I ain't said nothing yet.
Well, outside of the finance chair, my apologies. But just to clarify, the callbacks include also, I thought you had requested kind of a 5 to 10 minute brief description and not necessarily an update, but a description of what goes on in terms of our requirements for MERS and retiree health care, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I do want to know, my specific was when and how much money. We kind of know in 2021 how much money, and you know you got a prediction about kind of us being in a negative. And then I also want to have some discussion. We're going to do that. We put that on the Finance Committee agenda. We're going to look at that water fund a little closer when we come through that. So we got those. But if you think an agenda item there in that discussion.
I just added it.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, we will discuss, you want that discussion during the callbacks or in Finance Committee?
Anytime you want to discuss it. I mean, callbacks or no callbacks. Anything that you think is important, you know, I don't mind if the chief have to sit there and get called back again. The fire chief, the police chief, I'm going to treat him nicer, but the fire chief. So anything that you want to do in these hearings, own them, and let's just get it done. But I did want to say this. It is some areas that I'm looking at. I'm looking at additional help in the council office with Davina and Janelle. Small amount. I'm going to look at the salaries. You say y'all dealt with the police chief salary. I'm going to look at the clerks. I'm going to look at our office. It's going to be some selfishness now that we out of the emergency manager's grasp as it relates to the council and the clerk's office. So you might see some movement there. It might come to less than 100,000, but it might be some movement. You'll dip in the reserve for 100,000, maybe not, but you, as I talked to Ms. Steele, we might find something. In any other department in IT, when it comes to IT and the way we operate in here, it's gonna be some things that we could do in here technology-wise. I can go to almost any church sometime and I see screens. If I ain't got my Bible, I can read it off the screen. One face this way and two face out that way. And then a computer here is certain things that our staff can do to keep up with minutes. So it is going to be some things that we're going to look at. But I'll tell you this, if you convince me to wait till next year, I ain't tripping. But we're going to have some serious conversation about bringing some things up to speed in the council office. Just like the mayor looks at her office, we're going to look at ours. If the mayor need additional funds, if the legal department ain't scared to tell me, I'm convinced that in 2-3 years, Mr. Newsom, I can help find $1 million if we used $1 million. Now, that's just what I believe. I could be wrong, and the city could be broke like me. But you got a finance chairperson that's broke, but know how to count money. So it's going to be some talk about money and any movement around of money, but we going to do it together. Mr. Kim, is that correct? Is it Mr. Kim?
Yes, that's my name, sir.
If you hear them talking about some money that they won't talk in public, whisper and tell me in my ear what y'all need. Let me say this, the court stenographer. I was thinking, do we need a house court stenographer? Can we share one that's in legal, the police department, so forth and so on, versus contracting it out? Think about that, and we'll talk about it. But I look at some type of in-house court stenographer and that type of thing. So keep that in mind, legal department. Anything else? I could go on, but I'm late. And so I would entertain a motion to adjourn unless somebody from the legal department had something to say. Who is my favorite attorney in the legal department? Other than Ms. Wheeler and Ms. Kurtzner, who is my favorite attorney? Mr. Kim and Mr. Reed, who is my favorite attorney? The land bank house lawman right now is my favorite attorney, and I'm telling you, I'm waiting to get that done. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, before I get that motion, can I make a quick announcement to our colleagues? To my colleagues, you'll be getting a letter probably Monday from me, and I'm requesting two things. One is your choices for the Ethics Board by the 11th of May, which is a week from today. And also, Councilwoman Fields asked me to put together an ad hoc committee to create the qualifications and some other things for that Ethics Board. And if you have any people that you want on there, I'm thinking no more than 7 to 9, and I'm going to see if I can get the mayor to give me one for her, 2 for the ethics, and then 1 for this ad hoc committee. But if you got anybody that you want to serve on that ad hoc committee, Mr. Griggs, get that to me by the 11th. You'll get a letter. I'm just saying that, so it won't come as a surprise.
What ad hoc committee?
This is we've got the ethics board, but we've got to get qualifications for them. So we need a committee to create those.
Yeah, I can't pick Reverend Threlke or nobody else from the first ward until I see what it's going to look like. Politically, I'm not comfortable with them having citizens having subpoena power. I'm going to try to put something on the ballot to take that aspect away.
But now the ad hoc committee is
I understand.
Okay.
So I'll send somebody for the ad hoc committee, but I'm not finna submit my name yet and don't know what I'm submitting. But my position is this, Mr. President. I make no bones about it. When I turn citizens loose with subpoena power, legislative branch, courts got it, the ombudsman had it, but I ain't finna turn folks loose to be subpoenaing me. I'm trying to get ballot language, and I want to know when the deadline to try to get it on there. Ms. Brown, I'm sorry, but he got me fired up.
If I could, just for the record, just so that there's no duplication of effort, Ms. Wheeler and I have been talking back and forth for a long time, and actually, I think both of us are doing research on that particular body itself. And we haven't had a chance to meet recently, but we're already working on it.
Okay, because I mean, this is a public meeting, and I'm gonna say it like this, Mr. Davis, Ms. Guerra, and anybody else. See, right now I'm chairing finance, and then I'm in other meetings. The mayor, she doing her thing. You get the wrong folks on this ethic board with subpoena power, they subpoenaing me left and right. I ain't got time for no group of citizens to be subpoenaing me or the mayor or Mr. Gilchrist or Mr. Branch or you, Mr. Moneyman, because they will be looking at the money. This is kind of wild. So I'm just telling you, if I lead the charge and lose it, I'm gonna be leading the charge because I think they went a little overboard. And so maybe a lot overboard. So what's gonna happen out of an 11-member body, I wanna see if we can appoint folks who know the community, who ain't fixing to subpoena me on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the next Tuesday. I don't mind one subpoena, but this is gonna be a little much if you get the wrong mix of people on there. And so it's about high time when these people start pressuring us to pick an ethics board. Now you're gonna get some pushback. Mr. Gary, you'd have heard this before if I was the chairman, but sometime I stay in my lane. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn unless it's anything else.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I make a motion to adjourn.
It's
Mr.
been
Chair.
moved. Is there a second?
I support that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? If I vote no,
Well, you got lack of quorum.
yeah, I know it.
Well spoken, well played.
Man, that's great.
So that's why when you pick
In November, look like we missed all. Take that power away. I don't care if standing the conduct board, the ethics board, but subpoena power.
you also got a budget.
With subpoena power, and we got it. You don't give citizens subpoena power, man. You get the wrong people on there.
You got
a mess, man.
And so that's what I'm saying. That case needs to be made.
It's gonna be made. And I'm gonna put the written language. Hey, I don't mind being crazy. Like a fox, mental. I seen this guy park. Hey, I seen this guy at Halo Burger, and they was looking for a parking space. What's wrong with them? They go to handicap. I parked in the handicap. Now check this out. This guy was so embarrassed he wouldn't even sit at the table with me.
We got to teach.
Yeah, we need to sit at a different table. Man, Miss Fields back again. She got mad because of the 677. Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying we gonna get to it, but I did that on purpose. Now she know I had to be, but I didn't really do nothing wrong on purpose. I was polite proceed. This guy looked like he done shaved.
He did shave.
That's Miss.
Oh, Mr. Newsom, you gonna mess around in your stuff and we go, man, 'cause I was looking at it too. It was like better when I got it.